great things happen and really bad things happen. And you got to take it all in stride. And you got to pick yourself up the next day, strap your fucking shoes back on, and get out there and go to fucking war again.
How can you run faster for farther distances? My name is Austin Marks and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new, I am a hybrid athlete. On my channel, I post all about hybrid athlete training. Right now, I am currently training for a marathon. My goal is sub 3 hours, 30-minute marathon. I did run a marathon 2 years ago. My time was 3 hours, 45 minutes. After I ran the marathon, my endurance kind of declined because I stopped running. One thing I strongly suggest is that you keep running no matter what. Keep that momentum going, keep it alive. Well, anyway, I started running again and my endurance actually came back pretty fast. Now, like I said, I've always been an athlete and I did some of the short distance running, but I didn't actually go out for 10-mile runs, 15-mile runs, anything like that over the past year. It was maybe 2 miles max. I've always been into fitness and I listen to a lot of people. So therefore, I have some pretty good tips that I want to share with you today, and I'm implementing these tips myself. Like I said, I'm training for a sub 3 hour, 30-minute marathon, which is about 8 minutes per mile. To start, my number one tip is to go ahead and increase your mileage. If you are a newer runner, you want to do this at about 20% each week. So therefore, let's say you're running 10 miles a week. You want to go ahead and increase it to 12 and then maybe closer to 14. However, if you are a bit of a more experienced runner, you want to maybe increase it by like 10%. So 10% is going to be a larger number for someone who's running 40 miles compared to somebody who's running 10, obviously. The reason to do this is to prevent injury, but why increase your mileage? Well, increasing your mileage is going to go ahead and build that aerobic base, build that foundation for you. And if you're going out and running 10 miles, 3 miles is going to seem like nothing and you can run that super fast. I don't care if you're a track star in college, if you have a 2-mile race that you need to prepare for, I strongly suggest that you start running that higher mileage. That way, when you have to run the shorter distance, you can absolutely crush it. Tip number 2 is to go ahead and run at a zone 2 heart rate. So when you're running, you want your heart rate to be anywhere from 135 to 155. Now, once again, this is going to be building your aerobic base. Something else that is pretty cool that I found out is that endurance athletes actually have more blood than people who are not athletes or any kind of athlete that is not an endurance athlete. And the reason behind this is because their body is compensating for them running these big miles. So therefore, they create more blood, more hemoglobin to grab onto the oxygen. That way, they can keep supplying the muscles faster because aerobic exercise, you need oxygen to keep going, essentially. Super cool fact. I didn't know if you guys needed to know that or not, but I thought it was interesting. Let's go over the 2 things so far to help you run faster longer. Number 1 is increase your mileage. 2, slow down and run at a zone 2 heart rate. So you don't always need to run super fast. Running is kind of tricky. You run slow to run fast. Mentioning this though, you want to include tempo runs. So you do want to run fast. This would be roughly the other 20% of your training. 80% of it should be slow, zone 2. The other 20% should be this fast tempo pace. So like I said, I'm training for a sub 3 hour, 30-minute marathon. My pace is 8 minutes per mile that I'm aiming for. When I run a tempo run, I want to go out and run 5 miles at 8 minutes. So I will increase this mileage every single week. That way, hopefully, I can run 15 miles at 8 minutes per mile pace a few weeks before the marathon. That way I know, okay, Austin, we are getting closer to our goal. Why do this? Why not run fast all the time? Well, and reason number 2 is because when you run fast, you're using more of like an anaerobic type thing. So once you get into the higher mileage, it does get a little bit tricky. However, let's look at it this way. So when you sprint around the track, you get done and your muscles are super sore. This is the lactic acid that is building up in your muscles. So as you increase your tempo runs, you go ahead and build that lactic threshold. That way your body can keep going longer without that lactic acid buildup. Lactic acid typically comes from that anaerobic exercise. So if I was in the gym and I was doing a bunch of arm curls and I start to feel the burn, that's that lactic acid. You want to increase that lactic threshold, like I was saying. And this is why you need to increase your tempo runs each time. You want to run fast using that anaerobic exercise and then mixing it with that aerobic exercise. It gets super tricky. However, this is probably the number one key to running long distances super fast. Running slow but long distances will only get you so far. Look at ultra runners, for example. There are a ton of marathon runners who are much faster than ultra runners, even though ultra marathoners are putting in miles upon miles each week. Their training is totally different, and this is why marathon runners are much faster. They have these tempo runs that they're doing. Therefore, you need to have 3 types of runs in your training. You need to have an easy run, so this is just going out and getting the miles in. You need to have a long run, so you need to make sure that you're actually going out and going for these long runs. This will go ahead and help build that aerobic foundation. Easy runs do the exact same thing, except for they help build that mileage up each week. These 2 types of runs will be slow, and then you have your tempo run, which you're increasing your speed. These are the 2 main things, or 3 main things that you really need to focus on. You have an easy run, a long run, and a tempo run. You do this, and I promise you, you'll be able to run a marathon under 4 hours. You can be like me and run it under 3 hours, 30 minutes as well. But your first one, you may not be that fast, and that's okay. It ultimately all depends on where you are in your training, how long you have to train for the marathon. There are a ton of factors that go into play. Like I said, those are the main things I want you to focus on. However, I also want you to include things like strength training. Stronger muscles will help you stay on your feet longer, give you more power, and prevent injury. And then you also need to go ahead and have the correct nutrition. If you diet correctly and you eat the correct things before you're going to go run, I promise you, you will run twice as fast. Depending what I eat a couple days leading up to a big run or a big tempo run will ultimately be the decision as if I will run it at a 7:30 pace or an 8:30 pace. Things like carbs, salt, electrolytes, these are all your friends. I do have another video talking about what I exactly eat for a long run, how I build up all my fuel. That way I'm actually going to... I talk about what I eat, my electrolytes, my supplements, things like that. That way I can actually go out there and perform at my absolute best. I'll put the link to that video in the description below. Going back over absolutely everything so far. You want to run slow to run fast. You want to increase your mileage. You want to have a tempo run. You want to go ahead and strength train. You want to have good nutrition leading up to the race. And you also want to have good recovery. Make sure that you're not doing an easy run, a long run, and a tempo run all right in the same day. Space these guys out a little bit. You want to give your body time to recover. You may want to stretch. You may want to do some mobility things. One thing that I really started focusing on was doing warm-ups and cool-downs before and after my runs. It literally makes a huge difference when I'm recovering for the rest of the day and leading into the next run. This here is just a bonus tip, but having the correct gear can also be a game changer. So carbon plated shoes, for example, literally feels like you're running on a cloud. They're super expensive, but they're worth it. If you guys have any questions at all, please let me know. This is just kind of the rundown of how you can start to run faster for longer periods of time. If you're a longer distance runner and you're training for a half marathon or even a marathon, you definitely want to utilize all these tips. If you have any questions, like I said, please put them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer. I also highly appreciate it if you guys like and subscribe. Be the 1%.